Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/spookshow. Then go over to morbidlybeautiful.com as we are now part of the Morbidly Beautiful Podcasting Network.
You see Santa Claus tonight? You better run, boy. You better run for your life.
But Mother Superior, it's Santa Claus.
No, I have another reason to hate Christmas.
Now that hell is full, I wonder where you will go.
The caller is in the house. The calls are coming from the house.
You're my family now.
But if you're bad boys and girls, your name goes in the bad boys and girls book, and I'll bring you something horrible.
Yes, Virginia, there is a Santa Claus.
The All-American Spook Show Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the latest edition of the All-American Spook Show Podcast. I'm Josh. I'm joined here with Donny.
Yo.
And the Professor Smoak.
What's up?
Will is on Christmas assignment. He couldn't be with us this week, but we go onward and upward with, we haven't done Spookshow Spotlight in a while. I don't remember exactly the last time, but it was probably, good Lord, tail end of the summer. Well before
something like that.
Well before October. It's been a minute. So, we're returning back to the series here, and today we're just going to be focusing on Christmas slashers. Now, last year we had a couple of spotlight episodes where we kind of dove in on holiday horror. I mean, we literally just ran through. Here's just all the Christmas horror. I think that was just one episode, and then another one was like Thanksgiving horror, Hanukkah, New Year's, all the other little holidays, that are this time of year. So this time we figured we'd kind of focus in on just the Christmas slasher aspect, that little hallway off of the main hallway subgenre of that. And it's really not going to be kind of an informal conversation, really. I mean, because I looked through our archives and best I could figure, and we'll get everyone's opinion on what they think on a couple of these. We've done, by my count, 6 movies that I think you would consider a Christmas slasher film. 7, if you include just last week, over on Grindhouse Gutter on the YouTube channel, we did To All a Good Night. That was the professor's latest pull there for Grindhouse Gutter. So I guess, if you're counting that, that's 7 that I know that we've talked about. But, before we dive into those, I mean, Smoak, anything in particular you want to say about Christmas slashers? Or any particular one that kind of sticks out as like, your personal favorite, before we dive in?
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, for me, my personal favorite is probably might be some of y'all's as well, or at least way up there on your list. Is might as well start at the very beginning. Not the first Christmas horror movie, but arguably, I guess, the first Christmas. Technically, you'd call this a proto slasher because it came out in 1976. Before I think everybody's pretty much 1978 Halloween is sort of technically the first slasher, and a lot of movies after that were called slasher movies. But in 1976, Black Christmas came out. The genre itself hadn't even had a name yet. So, but that's the first one I'd say if you want to, call it a proto slasher or whatever. And if I had to pick a favorite, I mean, that's the storyline, everything that's going on in that movie is just, it's not way up there on the gore factor like you would get with some of the later Christmas slasher movies. Once, later in the 80s when splatter was a big thing. But as far as the storyline and the feeling of Christmas and all that, and the fact that it was directed by the same guy, Bob Clark, did A Christmas Story. So 2 very different, vastly different Christmas movies, but 2 classics of the genre. Well, of the Christmas film in general, and specifically horror.
I think that's one of the best little nuggets of information from that is that it's the same guy that did A Christmas Story, or Christmas is the guy that does like really just a dark movie. That is just that. Not to get in the spoiler territory. I mean, if you want to hear us go into the spoilers and talk deep about that, you have to go back to episode 22. So it's been a while back since we did that. I think that was Christmas of 2019 when we talked about that here on the show. But so it's been a while. But yeah, I mean, like just a dark ending, just so, especially for the time. And by the way, I think it was 1974 that came out. You said 76. I think it was 74.
I said 76. Yeah, 74.
But especially for the time, though, like the way that movie played out, this wasn't the way a lot of movies, were made back then. That, like you said, one of the early slasher flicks, right? Just that aspect of it, something that got played the hell out over the next decade, right? decade or so after that. But up to that point, you hadn't really seen anything like this. That kind of like, and then there was really, once again, not to give any spoilers, that there was no real resolution in the story either. It was just like kind of like, well, that was fucked up. The end, like. So yeah, personally, I agree with you. Like as far as like that's on the top of my list for sure. Donnie, I mean, you weren't on the show back when we did that. Have you ever had a chance to sit down and watch that movie?
Oh man, you guys are gonna kill me. I have not. I just don't. I don't typically watch holiday horror. I just typically don't delve into it.
I can see that. I mean, like I do think holiday horror is basically for people that are more inclined to love horror movies anyway. Like if you don't like horror movies, you're not going to go out of your way at Christmas time to watch these things. You're just not.
But I mean, okay, so I love horror movies. However, holiday horror is not really something I seek out,
And that's what I mean. I think you really have to be a fan of horror. Like, not just a casual, like, I know, we're all kind of, we have varying degrees of horror fandom here on the Spook Show. I get that. But I mean, like, I really think you have to be inclined to really like horror movies to seek a lot of these out. Because usually this time of year, right, what are you watching? You're watching It's a Wonderful Life, National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. You're watching the standards, White Christmas, whatever, right? You're watching that shit with your family and your kids and whoever, right? So you're not going to pull it. Look, all right, kids, gather around the old fireplace here and let's watch Krampus. Like it's just not, it's not something everybody does is all I'm saying. So I get that. I get that.
Also, I mean, not to get into the, psychology of it and all that stuff, but you think about prior to all this, prior to movies, when you had folklore and you had tales, a lot of that stuff was dark. If you even look at the original Grimm's fairy tales and a lot of that stuff is very Krampus himself, as you mentioned, it comes from folklore and stuff, and it's something to scare kids into behaving for Christmas. Yet Krampus will drag you to hell, eat you maybe or whatever if you're lucky. But these days we have Santa Claus who will put the lump of coal in your stocking if you're bad.
Yeah.
so over the course of the years, things have become a little bit more. Less terrifying for kids.
Yeah, I was about to say we've lightened up on the punishment. It used to be like we're going to scare the shit out of you to act straight. Now it's kind of like, all right, well, if you act bad, it's just going to be a lump of coal or maybe a bag of switches or something. I don't know. That's about the extent of it.
And probably how many parents really do the lump of coal thing? Some to prove a point maybe do and have.
I think,
but most aren't. They're going to like threaten that, but they aren't really going to.
I think maybe one time that I recall in my life, like my parents gave me like a lump of coal as a joke. It was like in the stocking, like, oh, haha, everybody laughs, but that was it. It wasn't serious. Oh, by the way, here's all your other, 45 toys that we bought you. It's over there,
Yeah. So I think horror movies are kind of a way to, especially Christmas horror, when we're talking about that, as a kind of a way to tap into that darker psychology of the holiday that we have kind of gotten away from nowadays.
I agree, and I'll also say too that like it's kind of it's a ripe, fertile landscape. The holidays and Christmas, even like Thanksgiving, all the other holidays too. There's a bunch of holidays this time of year. That's why most people just say holidays, all encompassing, right? It's a fertile ground because, and I say that because it's that time of year where you're supposed to, be thankful for family, faith is involved, right? Generally. So that being said, there's a scary side to those kind of things too, and then some people aren't all happy and sunshine and lollipops at Christmas time either. There are people that struggle with things at Christmas time because maybe they don't have family, right? Or whatever, right? So I think because of that,
lost family members or something like that.
Yeah. I think because of all those things, it, as good a time of the year as it is for everyone, it's also can be a bad time of year for some people. And I think horror can really tap into that. And some of them have done it really well, which we'll talk about. And some just
not so well
at all. Nice. Some just use Christmas as a backdrop. It just so happens to be, there's that. And we've talked about those kind of movies, in the past, especially just like I know it's Thanksgiving, but when we did Blood Rage, right? Like that really doesn't have anything to do with Thanksgiving other than the fact that they gathered for some horrible meal and then bad shit goes down,
And more recently, and speaking of Christmas, our Blood Beat, when we did Blood Beat, Blood Beat pretty much could have, it was in the winter, it was using snow outside as sort of a thing or whatever, but it could have been any time in winter, not necessarily Christmas. It just happened to be holidays.
I think the only useful aspect of Christmas use there with Bloodbeat is the fact that it draws them all together. It puts the whole family in the house at the same time, because otherwise maybe they aren't all there. That's it. It has nothing to do with Christmas otherwise.
True, kind of like the Home Sweet Home thing, so that there's people in the house for him to kill, for the killer to,
Yeah, it's just a means to an end, so to speak. It's just a MacGuffin, a plot point that just gets them in the house, so now they can be slaughtered, and I think with this, what we'll go through here a little bit is there's a lot of slaughtering going on. So I think we all agree. Well, Donnie, eventually I think you may agree when you watch Black Christmas. I feel pretty safe in assuming that you're going to enjoy that when you watch it. But we've also talked about Better Watch Out back in 2016, and that one I think kind of surprised us all. Well, we didn't watch it in 2016, but that's when the movie came out. We watched it.
Yeah, we watched it.
That was
2 years ago?
Yeah, I think that was like Christmas 2020. So that was, it was 2 years ago. But I was trying to find the specific episode number, and I can't find it. There it is. It's episode number 47. We watched Better Watch Out. Now, I'll also add, before we move on, Black Christmas, our consensus rating, of course, this is without Donnie so far, it's a 3.25. So it's the highest rated of the Christmas slashers that we've covered here on the Spook Show. Better Watch Out, our consensus rating was 3.1 stars. So it's just slightly below Black Christmas. And I think that one, for different reasons, that one kind of caught us all unaware, so to speak. Like, I think there was a certain level of, this is what we expect, and then, oh, wait a minute, this was a little better than I expected. That was that kind of movie. Donnie, you weren't there when we did that one, but you did go back and re-rate it, and you gave that one a 3. So there was that when we covered that one. Another one that we did was Silent Night, Deadly Night, and I think we just did that. That was last year, last Christmas, 2021. That was episode 85 in the archives. So if you want to go check that one out, from 1984, we gave that a consensus rating of 2.8 stars. So you're getting varying degrees here, down slightly from Black Christmas, Better Watch Out, Silent Night, Deadly Night. And then right below that, Christmas Evil from 1980. That was one that we did a while back as well. That was
episode 48.
Yeah, there you go. So that was right when we did Better Watch Out. It was right after that. So that one, 2.75 stars. 2.7 stars for that one. And then these are, I guess there's not much of a debate. Bloodbeat is a slasher, right? Right. I mean, we'll go with that.
Yeah, sorry. I just saw what was coming up.
Yeah, slasher, but it's a slasher.
yeah. It's kind of a weird one, but it is, we'll classify it as such. That one only got 2.1 stars out of us. But this last one is the one I was kind of on the fence of whether to count it, but if you think about it, it is. And that's the Ginger Dead Man from 2005. We gave that 1.38 stars. So by far the worst of all these, the Christmas slashers that we watched. And we just watched that one last Christmas. So that was what episode was that, Donnie?
87.
87. So yeah.
So yeah.
I mean, what more can you say? I mean, Donnie, you and I gave it 1 star. Smoak gave it 1.5. Will was the only one that was even slightly forgiving with his 2 stars. So
yeah.
Yikes.
Yeah.
I think that
could have re-rated it, but
I think that was just for the comedy aspects of it. He just left it there, but it was funny. I'll give you that. And then, of course, we just did, like I said last week on the Grindhouse Gutter on our YouTube channel. We just talked about To All a Good Night. Definitely a slasher, no doubt. Very much like we talked about on that episode, formulaic in the sense of like it feels like everything else you've watched. But this one kind of was one of the original ones. I mean, it came out before almost all of them, right, Smoak?
It came out the same year as Christmas Evil that we had mentioned in it. And, of course, same year as Friday the 13th and a Maniac and a shit ton of other slasher movies came out in 1980. But, yeah, they hadn't really established that stereotype yet. But this movie feels like what those stereotypical slasher movies would end up doing. It didn't go above and beyond. It didn't give you a whole lot of splatter effects. It didn't give you too much twists or anything. I mean, there was a twist, of course, as any slasher movie does have, but it just doesn't go there in a lot of places that you want it to. So,
and it is fair to point out on that one as well. We compare it. It was before all these. That was a straight to video release that probably almost no one watched. and then kind of really disappeared for a long time, right? It was one of those that just kind of went into the dustbin of horror history, and just recently, you know, within the last decade or so, probably got rediscovered, right, by Vinegar Syndrome. So I believe it was. So that one, that's probably why it didn't get any kind of credit or just desserts for, you know, being. I mean, look, it's not a good movie, right? But you know, for that kind of movie and the formula and everything is what I'm getting at. You know.
Yeah, it's serviceable. It's just middling. You know, it doesn't. It's way better, and there's quite a few worse.
Yeah.
I think that movie gets a little bit of attention more so because of the director. You know, David Hess directed it. He was the star, for those who maybe don't know, star of Last House on the Left, at least the main bad guy crew. So I think that's, you know, if it wasn't for that, that movie might still be wallowing in obscurity. You know, it might not be too many people wanting to release it if it wasn't for, you know, that's just been a big draw for that movie. And then people are watching it like, oh, you know, it's not as good as I hoped it would be.
That being said, when I sat down and watched it, it really held my attention. You know, like it was enjoyable. You know, like not many times was I like, oh God, when's this thing over? You know what I mean? Like I think it's pretty fast paced, and you know, it delivers the story you figure it's going to deliver. Did it break any, you know, big ground? No, but you know, it was unique if you put it in the perspective of it was the one that kind of came before a lot of the ones that did it a little better later on.
It's one of those where if you've never seen it and you like slasher movies a lot, then you're gonna get a lot of enjoyment out of it. If you're not the biggest fan of slasher movies, it's not going to win you over.
Yeah. We talk a little bit deeper into that, and Smoak goes into some of that, the background on that one over on our YouTube channel, and that was the latest Grindhouse Gutter that we just did.
Why fuss and fret about dinner? Why not have it right here? Yes, this drive-in offers everyone in the family a real picnic treat for dinner. We've got delicious sandwiches with all the trimmings and your other dinner favorites, plus whatever you want to drink, hot or cold. Come early before the show starts, or eat while you're being entertained, or at intermission time. So why fuss? Give your family a tasty dinner at this drive-in.
Some other ones that we can mention here. We've got Jack Frost from 1997.
Oh, yeah.
Not the one with Michael Keaton in it either. The other one.
No.
You've got the movie with Bill Goldberg in it, Santa's Sleigh from 2005.
Yeah. I remember when that came out. I still haven't seen it.
But... No, I haven't either, but I'm just, you know, kind of running down the list of some of these. And we talked about Black Christmas from 74. There have been two other Black Christmas versions of Black Christmas. One from 2006, and then one just a couple years ago in 2019, and I haven't seen either of them. And obviously, Donny, if you haven't seen the original, you probably haven't watched those.
No,
Smoak, have you watched either of those?
Not neither of the remakes. I'm trying to remember if maybe I did see the second remake and was that forgettable. I know I haven't seen the newest one. I feel like I did watch the other one, but it was in one ear and out the other kind of thing. Yeah.
What was
that? That does happen sometimes with these remakes for me. Sometimes
I know
it depends. If it's something that really grabs my attention, then cool, yeah. But if it didn't, then I need to rewatch it and maybe I'll like it a little better, or it just ends up being forgettable.
I know what you just reminded me of because it's the same time period. House of Wax, that remake.
Yeah.
First off, I'll say once again, because every time it comes up, I have to say this: fuck that movie. But when we watched that back in episode Who Gives a Fuck, I only recommend you listen to our episode. By the way, whatever episode that was, go back and find that. But don't watch the movie. But I remember you saying that like you remembered watching it back then, but you only remembered it up to a certain point. And and you bailed on it or something.
I never feeling that point until we did it for if it wouldn't have been for this podcast, I could have gone the rest of my life without seeing the rest of that movie and been just fine.
Well, unfortunately, now with our addition of Crapsterpiece Theater and frankly some of the Cult Corner movies, there's going to be a lot of these type of movies that, like, you know what, I could have went the rest of my life without, like, for instance, when we watched Showgirls, like, I had never watched that. Yeah. I had no desire to watch that, but here we are.
Yeah, well, at least we have the added benefit of, you know, we watch these movies, and if they really they suck, then at least we're shitting on them together, you know.
Yeah,
we're having a good laugh, fun with it that way. It's better than just sitting by yourself and throwing this movie on and like, why did I even watch that?
Yeah.
God.
Which that before we move on, that reminds me, our next Crapsterpiece Theater, which happens to be Crapsterpiece Theater number 10, That will come out not this Friday, but the next, 2 days before Christmas on December 23rd. And that's going to be Elves, that Dan Haggerty classic. So you want to go over to patreon.com/AA Spookshow and listen to us have to gag that one up. It's like having to choke up a hairball or something when we have to talk about some of these movies.
Except for one of us will not have to.
Yeah, and Will, that was Will's nominee this time. So that's the gimmick on Crapster Pieces. If we all nominate each one of these movies that you choose from on these polls, and if we don't tell you which one is ours until the voting is over. But whenever it's all wrapped up, the person that won the poll doesn't have to be there to watch it. So this time, Will nominated Elves. He won, so he doesn't have to be there. So it's the rest of us that have to sit through that horse shit. But I just figured I'd add that in before we moved on. But like some other movies, Silent Night, Bloody Night from 1972. Now that one's kind of loose as far as it's a slasher or not, right, Smoak? I believe so, but it's been so long since I watched that movie. Yes. That one's kind of
Silent Night, Bloody Night.
Yeah.
Is that what you said? Silent Bloody Night.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's been a while for me, but I remember when you hear that title, you might be reminded of Silent Night, Deadly Night, which is definitely not. That one is for sure a slasher, but yeah, Silent Night, Bloody Night. It's been a while since I've seen it, and I remember if it is, it's sort of in that gray zone area of. It's not a full-on slasher movie anymore.
And I think there's some loose Canon Films ties to that. So maybe that's one that we can wedge in on Canon Fodder or something like that one of these days.
Yeah, that was one to get to on one of these Christmas because I totally pretty much forgotten about that movie as far as what. Definitely don't know how it ended. Remember how it ended? I remember little bits and pieces of it. But yeah.
So
that'd be a good Christmas one, maybe next Christmas or the one after that.
Before we continue, I'm going to go ahead and tease what's coming next week. Next week, we're going to watch the Advent Calendar. Now, at last check, and I'm pretty sure it's still available on Shudder if you want to go check that out. That came out last year, 2021. That's what we're going to be watching and talking about on episode 139 next week. But the reason I mention that is because we were supposed to watch something else instead of the Advent Calendar.
Yeah.
And it was a movie that Smoak nominated, and he won. So we're like, all right, well, let's do it. But even he was like, you know what, this one, I don't know. Maybe we need to reevaluate. And one of us fell on the sword and had to sit down and watch this movie, and it was Donny, because Smoak and I, we watch more of these movies than he does. So we're like, you know what, maybe somebody that doesn't watch as many of these should be the judge of whether we should talk about this or not. So, what was that movie, Donny? That shall not be named, I guess.
No, we'll go ahead and name it. It was Christmas Cruelty from 2013. It was a Norwegian Christmas slasher, mainly about a serial killer Santa. It doesn't matter if you're naughty or nice. And it doesn't matter who you are. Yeah,
Look, I know this is an audio podcast, but we can see each other. If you could only see Donnie's dead fish eyes as he speaks about Christmas cruelty.
Nah, I will say the first 5 minutes made me want to just turn it off. I was just like, I don't know. But, I guess without actually spoiling anything, thing is there's just some fucked up shit that goes on in that movie, man.
And that's why we decided not to celebrate Christmas that way, because that would have been the episode literally less than a week before Christmas, and we decided, you know what, maybe this is, or I should say Donnie kind of made the call, because he's the one that watched it. We decided, that's a little bit too much for right before Christmas. Maybe we should hang that one up for another day. So, one of these days.
Yeah, I mean, and honestly, because I've had some time to stew on it a little bit, just kind of, and I think it's kind of one we should probably do, just not during this time of year.
There's no rule saying you can't do a Christmas horror in the middle of July, right? Maybe that's what we do.
Christmas in July.
I was about to say, maybe that's what we do. We do Christmas in July, and when we just stack up a couple of these movies that, Lord knows there's no shortage of Christmas horror, Christmas slasher movies. That's for sure. I mean,
it's true.
We're just going through a handful of them and talking about some, loosely today. There's tons. I mean, like I said, last year we went through that whole list. It was a bunch of fucking movies. And every year there's probably 4, 5, 6 more that they add to the pool, so
Sure.
just recently on Shudder, Christmas Bloody Christmas came out. I don't know if Violent Night, I guess, but that's not really a horror, right? That's more of an action.
It's got elements. It's not straightforward horror, but it's got enough gore and violence in it to possibly push it into somewhat of a for some people it might be.
To bring up the high kill count and the high gore score, I assume, for that one.
Yeah. We could get the kill count and the gore score up there on that for sure. Even if it doesn't fall into straightforward horror, we could probably still do it.
Well, yeah, I mean, we can still do it. I mean, look, we made room for Die Hard and some other movies like that, right? So, yeah, there's always room on our plate for movies like that. Now, we talked about Silent Night, Deadly Night, but there's a whole series of those, too. There's Silent Night, Deadly Night Part 2.
Anytime I hear Silent Night, Deadly Night 2, the first thing that pops in my mind is it's garbage day. That scene alone, that scene will be stuck in your head if nothing else from that movie.
I've seen the scene.
I think everybody's seen that scene.
I'll put it this way: you've seen Silent Night, Deadly Night, right?
Yeah. Well, remember we watched that. What was that last year, right?
Yeah. So if you've seen Silent Night, Deadly Night, then you've seen about 90% of Silent Night, Deadly Night 2, because most of that movie is them rehashing the first movie, and then some other stuff tacked on at the end of it. That's pretty much what that. I remember being really disappointed when I saw that sequel the first time, because it really, literally, the first half of the movie is just part one flashback scenes from it.
And the messed up thing is that, like, it's not like it was a movie that, like, oh, we need to rush and make this sequel because the first one was good and it came out the next year or something. No, it came out 3 years later. Almost 3 years later. It's like, what the hell, man? Then after that, there was Silent Night, Deadly Night 3, Better Watch Out. Silent Night, Deadly Night 4, Initiation. Silent Night, Deadly Night 5, The Toy Maker. And then there was a kind of a remake just called Silent Night from 2012. So all those, I would think
about the Toy Maker that you mentioned too, like that. I think it was the Toy Maker, and we probably talked about this. I think maybe on the episode of Silent Night, Deadly Night. But Mickey Rooney,
oh god,
he was like all up in arms as a lot of people were when the first Silent Night, Deadly Night movie came out in 1984. That there was a lot of people up in arms about that movie just because of how dare you display Santa Claus this way as a killer, and the kids are going to be scared. And he was one of the voices that were speaking up in Hollywood about that. And then he's in Silent Night, Deadly Night 5, The Toy Maker.
Yeah, because we talked about that when we Silent Night, Deadly Night came out. How like it basically only played in theaters for about a week because of that. Remember, they kind of got yanked out of theaters.
Yeah, what was the trailers? Because I remember seeing the trailers. I mean, it was '84. I was 11 years old, I guess, when that movie came out. And I remember seeing some of the trailers on TV, but they got yanked from TV pretty shortly. Even they were probably even more up in arms about that because kids could see that, the trailers. And yeah, there's not gore in there, but I do remember vividly the scene of the axe, like when he's standing outside in the snow and the axe drops into the frame and it's like, a little bit of blood on the axe or whatever, maybe. That is a very memorable trailer, even though, of course, there's no gore in it. And that alone pissed off enough parents to get them out there protesting the movie and also protesting the trailer being shown on TV. And I think the trailer got yanked after a short time as well.
The crazy thing is Silent Night, Deadly Night 4, Initiation, that was directed by Brian Usna, the same guy that directed Reanimator. So that's a random connection. But Usna made a lot of those kind of movies in those years following that, right?
Yeah, I think it was Stuart Gordon that made the first Reanimator, and then Brian Usna directed all the ones after that. I mean, Usna was involved in the first one too. I think maybe as a producer or something with Stuart Gordon, and then a ton of his other movies on his own.
Yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. He was the producer of Reanimator, yeah. And From Beyond and Dolls. And then and then somehow Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. In the middle of that. Quite an eclectic filmography if you ever want to go look at Brian Usna's filmography. But yeah, I mean, that's just some. I mean, is there anything else you guys wanted to pull out before we kind of wrap it up here as far as like specific Christmas slashers that you might want to recommend or anything?
We just got finished talking about it, but if I had to pick, because we were kind of going over a format for the show of like each of us kind of pick two movies and we'll talk about it or whatever. And I was thinking about if I had to pick two favorite Christmas slasher movies, not necessarily Christmas horror in general, but Christmas slasher, to recommend, or that would be maybe my favorite. And there's a shit ton of these movies out there, so it's kind of hard sometimes to pick a favorite from the Christmas holiday movies. But honing in on slashers, I'd already mentioned it was for me, if I had to pick two, Black Christmas, the original, and I've got a soft spot for that Silent Night, Deadly Night, the first one. Even though it's not, some people would say, it's got its place and its merits and all that, but it's definitely not the best of the Christmas slashers. It's just the one that I saw a lot as a kid or as a teenager, and I've carried it through. Pretty much watched that one almost every year or every other year. Just about. It's just very 80s. Checks all the good boxes of slasher movies as far as like it's got decent gore. I mean, it doesn't go crazy with it, but it's there. So I mean, I would recommend those two for anybody who hasn't delved into Christmas holiday horror movies or whatever. If you've never seen Black Christmas, definitely watch that one first, and then you can't go wrong with Silent Night, Deadly Night. But I'll let y'all choose some of y'all's too as well to put some more recommendations.
I'll totally agree with Black Christmas, and I'll throw out one more that has a soft spot for me, and that was Christmas Evil that we did. And that's just because of that batshit crazy ending of that movie.
That's true. That is true. That one. The only reason that for me that it might get edged out a little bit is because of how many times I probably saw Silent Night, Deadly Night versus how many times I saw Christmas Evil. Yeah. Really, they're pretty much equal to me.
And I love Silent Night, Deadly Night as well. But Christmas Evil, I don't know. There's something about it. It's so it is well done for what it is. But it's so much like a time capsule type of movie too. Like, that late 70s, early 80s. I mean, it came out in 80, but just the randomness of it all, especially toward the end. And it's just like, what the fuck is going on here? And it's like, it sticks out. I don't care whatever, if you sit down and watch that movie, it's going to stick with you. It is, you're going to remember it.
Especially the very end, the last scene.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, everything that leads up to the end and then the very end. It's just like, what the... I think, that was that soundbite that we pulled that we used to have in the open.
What the hell did we just watch?
What the hell did we just watch? That was from that when we were like, because when you're sitting there, just like, wow, what the fuck, So yeah, that one has kind of a soft spot, but I definitely agree with Black Christmas. I think out of the ones we've talked about here, and I can't really think of anything else that we haven't talked about that even comes close to Black Christmas as far as, these type of movies are concerned. But yeah, so that's really, I guess, all, just kind of a brief, casual conversation about Christmas slashers. And look, if you're listening to this and you're like, why didn't they talk about this? Send us a message, send us an email, send us something like, hey, fuck, I can't believe we forgot to talk about this one in particular. But, these things are always like beauty is in the eye of the beholder, right? I'm sure someone's favorite Christmas slasher movie out there we didn't talk about, so.
Or new ones, I'm not the best at knowing the new horror movies when they come out and all that stuff. So if there's any new horror movies that people think are, you guys haven't seen this one, you definitely need to check this out. Then definitely shoot us that because.
I mean, like I said, none of us really had much expectations for Better Watch Out, and we all kind of enjoyed it. So that's an example right there of like, hey, you don't, just because it was made in the last few years doesn't mean we won't love it. So yeah, if you got any recommendations or anything, throw them at us. It's the Christmas season, so we're ready to watch a couple maybe we haven't seen. So. All right, so yeah, like I said, next week we'll be doing the Advent calendar. That will be the regular episode, and then next Friday, December 23rd, over on our Patreon, patreon.com/Spookshow, Crapster Piece Theater number 10, Elves. Yeah, so that's how we're gonna wrap up the Christmas season, honestly, because we're kind of moving on to other shit.
Yeah, as we should.
Oh, yeah, well, I don't know. I mean, we're going to have our next cannon fodder after that, episode 140.
That's true.
Maybe we're going to wish we had stuck to Christmas. I don't know. You'll find out.
We'll see.
Yeah.
Although with canon, we had no choice. Just like our summer, what was it? The summer camp movie. We had to go with they didn't have a Christmas movie that we knew of, or that also knew of either, I guess, right?
So the two things that we've learned so far about Canon Films is they didn't make any damn Christmas movies, not really, and then they didn't make any summer camp movies when there was a bunch of summer camp movies being made in the 80s, so go figure. They were the one company that decided.
We all came to a consensus of not doing a certain movie, which could be tied to Christmas or is tied to Christmas, but not technically a Christmas movie, but we're trying to hold back on some of our big guns.
Yeah, and also we'll add one of the early cannon fighters was Invasion USA, and we've already done it, and that was at Christmas.
Yeah.
So So we had to kind of go off script. So, but yeah, like we'll let you know getting closer to that what that's going to be, and that will be the day after Christmas. That's our after dinner mint to you. It's cannon fodder. It will come out the next day. So. lots of cool things going on. We encourage you to go check out the website, aaspookshow.com. That's the center of the Spook Show universe, and you can find just about anything and everything you want that has anything to do with us there. So for Will, who couldn't be with us, he's off on Christmas excursion. Donnie, Professor Smoak, I'm Josh. We're the All-American Spook Show Podcast, and we'll talk to you next week for the Advent Calendar.
Please replace the speaker on its rack when you're ready to leave. Failure to do so will damage both the speaker and your car. We'll be grateful, and so will the patrons who follow you.